Hello and welcome to Indie Business Radio for Monday, September 22nd, 2008. Now, before you think you're in the wrong place, let me assure you that you're not. Donna Maria, your regular show host, is away speaking at a business boot camp. And since she hasn't figured a way to clone herself, she asked me to sit in for her. I'm WendyY Bailey. I'm Master Certified Group Coach and President of Brilliance in Action Enterprises, Incorporated. Just call me Wendy Y. You've arrived at the one place where we empower you to enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way. Today's media partner is OnlineLabels.com, where you get over 130 label sizes in over 30 different materials for your laser and inkjet printers. Don't pay more than you have to for your labels. Visit www.onlinelabels.com and learn how you can start slashing your labeling and shipping costs today. With OnlineLabels.com, it's as easy as click, print, stick. Well, there's no shortage of folks out there to tell you what to do or what not to do to become successful in business. But I've got to say that there are a lot of people who are good at boiling down the principles into bite-sized chunks that indie business owners can follow. Today's guest is an exception. Richard St. John, author of 8 to Be Great, heads up an award-winning marketing company that has taken home the top awards in the world for best corporate videos and script writing. On the fitness front, he has run marathons on all 7 continents. Now that's impressive. And he and his wife have climbed 2 of the world's highest mountains. Richard's talk, Secrets of Success in 8 Words, 3 Minutes, is rated one of the most inspiring talks on the famous TED conference website. So Richard doesn't just talk about success. He has achieved it in a number of ways, and I'm thrilled to be the guest host welcoming him and having him here today. Hey, Hey, Richard.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show, Wendy. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. Welcome to Indie Business Radio. If you have a question or comment about success for Richard, please call in at 800-773-0355. That's 800-773-0355. Okay, so let's get started. We always like to start Indie Business Radio by giving our listeners some background on our guest in terms of how they started their entrepreneurial journey. I take it at some point, Richard, you must have had a traditional job. So tell us how you transitioned from that to being on your own.
Okay, Wendy. I don't know if I had a traditional job, but I worked at Nortel. I worked at Nortel Networks R&D Labs for 10 years, doing marketing and presentations and writing CEO speeches and things. And it really was actually a dream job. I was working with terrific people, great projects, and being paid a lot of money. But I wasn't doing the one thing that I loved at the time, which was photography. So I said, hey, maybe I'll leave and start my own little photo company. At which point my heart said, hey, yeah, go for it. My wallet, and all my friends, I might add, said, are you crazy? You can't walk away from this job. You know, it's a dream job. You know, you're never going to make as much money at another job. You're going to starve. Well, I didn't listen to them. I followed my heart, started my own little photo company. And, yeah, first, you know, there wasn't much money, but it didn't matter because I was doing what I loved, and I was having a lot of fun doing it. But eventually the money came and made me a millionaire. So I learned it's true what they say, you know, do it for love and the money does come anyway. There's a second part to that equation.
Okay.
You know, that if you want to make a lot of money, you can't just do what you love. You've got to serve others something they love. So it's a 2-part equation. But
interesting.
It's interesting, Wendy, that, you know, when I was trying to decide, am I going to leave the company or not, it was, you know, I had to push myself. So what I did is I wrote a note and stuck it on the fridge, and the note said, leave Nortel and start your own company by November the 1st. And so every time I opened the fridge door, I saw that note, and that sort of pushed me, and I ended up actually starting my company a month before my deadline. So that helped me. And I also prepared. You know, WendyY, as I worked at Nortel and sort of thought I might go to my own, I spent a lot of time preparing. And, you know, whatever I was doing, I pretended that I was already out on my own. So when somebody in Nortel gave me a project to do, I treated them just like I knew I'd have to treat a customer when I have my own company. So I would bust my buns to work hard for them and do a good job for them because I knew that's what I have to do when I went out on my own.
Yeah, so it kind of gave you some practice.
Exactly. And why not get the big company to pay you to practice, right?
Yeah, very good. I love it because it's clear that following your passion has really been a key for you in making that transition. How do you know if your passion is going to be profitable? I mean, like if you're talking to some of the indie business owners out there, how do you know? I know you had a plan and you planned for it and you practiced, and I totally get that. How do you know if your passion is going to be profitable?
Well, to be honest, I never worried about it being profitable. I sort of assumed if I worked hard at it, did a good job, and did what I thought led to success, that eventually it would all work out. And that turned out to be right. So I actually didn't go after the money. I turned down, like I say, I already had lots of money. I was working at a great job. So money wasn't the driver. And I say to people, if money's your driver, you're going to do a lot better if passion is your driver. Because the minute you love what you do, you're automatically energized.
Sure.
And all the other stuff comes. You will do all the other things that lead to success. In fact, what I have now is sort of when people say, they want to start their own company, I do what I call the 8 to be great test, because 8 to be great is the title of my book.
Sure.
So I ask them 8 questions. And the first one is passion. Do you really love the thing you're going into? And I don't mean just like it. Do you really have a passion for it? And 2 is work. Are you willing to work longer hours than you've ever worked before? And probably you're going to have to give up a lot of personal time. Are you willing to do that, at least for a while?
Mm-hmm.
3 is focus. Are you willing to focus on just one thing and stop dabbling in many different areas? 4 is push. Are you willing to keep pushing yourself, rather than just sitting back in your comfort zone? 5 is ideas. Ideas are the fuel that creates products and companies. So are you able to come up with good ideas?
Mm-hmm.
6 is improve. Do you keep improving yourself in what you do and never assume that you're good enough? 7 is serve. Are you serving others something of value? Not just serving yourself. And, what value are you really serving other people? And 8 is persist. It takes 10. I found, WendyY, it takes 10 years to succeed in anything. So you're willing to hang in there over the long haul and persist through failure and mistakes. So those are the 8. And I say, based on my research, the more you can answer yes to those 8 questions, the more you're well-positioned, to succeed. Because those really are the 8 principles that are the core for success in any field.
And we're going to get into those in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. The thing that struck me as I was listening to you share the 8, and I've done a little bit of the research to prepare for this show as well. And the thing that struck me as I watched your videos and as I listened to you just now is, what do you say to someone who has multiple burning passions that they can clearly answer, yes, I've got passion and all the other 8 to great elements as part of whatever that passion is. They've got multiple burning passions. How do you help them kind of sort through that?
Well, I assume there are multiple burning passions in different areas. Mm-hmm. So if they're in different areas, I guess you've got to prioritize. You can't be all over the map. One of the key things which sort of gets into one of the other top 8 is focus. And the thing you got to remember is great people aren't great at everything. They're only great at one thing. Quincy Jones told me he can't even drive a car because he's focused his whole life on making beautiful music, and that's what made him great. I'm sure he had other passions, but he just put them aside. Now, the thing is, remember, you're only putting them aside temporarily. You can always go back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But at any one time, I followed different passions through my career. I started out doing photography when I left Nortel, but then I, got into videos, I got into marketing, I got into business, I got into other areas. But at any one time, I basically threw away the other thing I was doing and just focused entirely on that one thing at that time. So I'm not saying you can't do a lot of things, you just can't do them simultaneously.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you're sort of stepping on my toes a little bit because I'm one of those people that I have a ton of different passions, and I don't pursue all of them at one time, but you are definitely letting me know that you have to consider the focus aspect in what you do. Now, Richard,
yeah, and there's different levels too, WendyY. Yeah, I mean, when I still run. I love my work, but I still take time out of the day to run. And that's a passion. So it's not like I don't do any, but I put 90% into one thing and 10% into other stuff, kind of thing. Or 80-20, maybe.
Yeah, you make it a higher priority.
You make it
a lot more attention to it than you do the other, 100 passions that you may have. For example, you're running.
We're on the same page. It's just how much time do you spend at the other things, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Okay.
So I got to ask you, I don't know if you're aware, but Donna Maria is working hard on her fitness level, and she wants to increase her focus around that. And since you're obviously such an accomplished athlete, what has your research helped you discover about the connection between maintaining a good level of physical fitness and being successful in your own business? Is there a connection there, and what is it?
Good question, but actually there is no connection.
Okay.
Because I went out and interviewed all these people. I didn't do it by phone, so I got to stand face-to-face with them. And I can tell you, WendyY, there's a lot of very successful people out there who are in pretty bad shape, physically. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, there are many people who are physically in excellent shape, but they're not successful in any other area except being fit. So there's no real correlation, but I can tell you on my own personal basis, staying in shape and being fit has really helped me, in a bunch of ways. Because, for one thing, it's my passion. I love to do it, so it's not a big deal to do it. So I say find your passion. Like, if you don't like running, find something else. If you don't like biking, find something else. Do something. And ideas. When I'm out running, I've come up with some of my best ideas because exercise increases the blood flow to your brain. I've come up with an idea that made me $1 million while I was out for a run. So to me, it certainly paid off.
So your research didn't confirm there being a connection, but you know firsthand that there's a real strong connection in how your brain works when you're physically fit.
Yeah,
when there's
for me,
some focus there as well.
Yeah. I personally, yes, it works, and it works for a lot of people. Most successful people, are not obese. I haven't met an obese successful person yet. They may be overweight, but they're not right off the chart. And most of them are actually fairly slim, and because they realize they're more. One of the reasons I exercise is because it gives me more stamina, and I can outwork anybody because I have more stamina. I can outwork guys half my age. Yeah. I can stay up all night for 3 days a week if I have to because I'm in good shape. So it helps you there. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my take on that one.
I love it. The thing that I know, based on reading and kind of getting to know you before we got on the air, is that you actually interviewed like a ton of successful people in your research to fine-tune these bite-sized chunks. So what I'd love to do is talk to you a little bit about your research and how you underwent talking to all of these famous people. You taught all these successful people. You talked to Quincy Jones. I saw in your video you talked to Martha Stewart. You talked to Bill Gates. What was that journey like for you?
Oh, that was fascinating. Very scary at first because, I wasn't a journalist at the time, and I'm still not a journalist. So to walk up to these big names was quite frightening. But I pushed myself to do it, and the thing I discovered was they're all just like us. There's no difference. Like, in the end, they were happy to help. They would give me interviews, and they're very nice and straightforward and very helpful. Contrary to popular belief. Even Martha Stewart, who people say is really tough, I saw her talking on her cell phone, and I went up to her and asked her for an interview. She put the cell phone down and said, "Of course. What would you like to know?"
Wow.
No third degree, like you're a famous journalist or writing for Time magazine, just how can I help? And I found that pretty consistently with the big names. If I can get face-to-face with them, they always say, sure, how can I help? So I think that's a good message that people need to know.
Yeah, that kind of gets into one of the 8 to Great serve, because there's that spirit of service that I clearly got from your story about Martha Stewart. We have to take a break in just a minute, and what I want to do when we come back is begin to talk about each one of the 8 to Great, and maybe you can share some stories along the way about all the really cool people that you connected with that supported your research.
Sure.
Okay.
That would be great.
And we're going to get your personal take on the 8 things we need to be successful in business and in life. It's a lot easier than you think, so don't touch that mouse, and we'll be right back.
Why is everyone listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com? Because it's the future of talk radio. Every day, more and more people are finding Internet radio as not just an alternative media, but as a replacement to traditional AM and FM broadcast stations. Internet radio offers a wider variety of programs, convenient on-demand listening that meets your schedule, and fewer commercial interruptions. And GlobalTalkRadio.com is already leading the way by matching this content with a highly targeted Internet audience. GlobalTalkRadio.com offers its listeners one of the widest programming varieties on the Internet, from business and finance to self-improvement, paranormal, health, literature, romance, politics, and more. There are also opportunities for prospective hosts who would like to host their own weekly or one-time talk shows. Want to learn more? Check us out at www.globaltalkradio.com and see the future of talk radio today.
Hey, welcome back to Indie Business Radio. This is WendyY Bailey. I'm sitting in as guest host for Donna Maria today. Can you believe that the holidays are right around the corner? Wouldn't you like to give the gift of indie this year rather than a gift from a big box store? If so, visit www.indiebeauty.com and click on the link for our member directory. More than 700 members in all 50 states, and you can find indie beauty products in your state as well. Think globally, buy locally, from your local indies, of course. Welcome back. Our guest today says in his book, 8 to Be Great, that he has boiled down what we all need to do to be successful into 8 bite-sized chunks. And Richard, I got to tell you, I'm amazed at how succinct these chunks are and how very clear they are. I want to get the whole story. I want people to go out and get your book. Go to 8 to Be Great. We're going to scratch the surface a little bit, and I think your website is richardstjohn.com, richardstjohn.com.
Yes, so you need to go to 8tobegreat.com or richardstjohn.com.
Excellent. So let's start to scratch the surface on the 8 steps. First, let me ask you, we were talking a little bit over the break about how you started to boil these down. You said that it was really, really tough. Tell us a little bit about your process of interviewing all of these successful people and having them be so welcoming and warm and sharing their information so freely. And I'm sure that left you with a ton of information. How did you go through that process and then boil it down to the 8?
Well, good question, because, that's really where the work is. Doing the interviews was pretty quick, relatively speaking, because then I had to spend years tearing apart every interview, line by line, word by word, into all the factors that people said helped them succeed. And then you start to see that, then you put them in the buckets. So everybody who says they love what they do goes into one bucket. Everybody who says they works hard goes into another bucket. And eventually I had over 300 buckets of things that people had said.
Wow.
So what I did was add up the comments of the bucket, and the reason these 8 are here is because I had more comments that people said these help them succeed than any other factors. So I'm not saying there aren't other things that don't help you succeed. I'm just saying these were the big ones.
Gotcha.
So that's how I got to. That was all the work that went into making it seem simple.
Sounds like a grueling process because I can't imagine. How did you decide on 8? I mean, even though I know that, these sort of bubbled up and became the predominant ones, surely there were 10 or 12 others that were also pretty strong.
Oh, even more than that. But I'll tell you, Wendy, why. I guess the main reason is because I had to pick factors that applied to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Not just one particular field. So, for instance, people say to me, well, how come you don't have people skills in there? And I say, because I've worked with top CEOs, and they had terrible people skills. Like they weren't good to anybody, and yet they became the CEO. So I say to myself, well, it's not one of the top 8 because, these have to be things that apply to every field. So, things like people skills, communication skills, all those things are skills that we build on top of these 8,
Okay. So 8 was the magic number for you then?
It was, and, I could probably, I'm going to come out with other books that deal with those specifics, that apply to certain fields but not to all fields. Mm-hmm. These things apply to everybody. It doesn't matter whether I studied an animal behaviorist or the Google founders or Quincy Jones or, people in all these different fields exhibited these 8. So that's the important part.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So let's talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
The first one we talked about a little bit, so let's talk about it a little bit more. Passion.
Yeah, passion's a big one, and I was surprised at how often when I was doing interviews that successful people actually use the words love or passion when they talk about what they do. When I asked Russell Crowe what led to his Academy Award for Best Actor, he said the bottom line is I love the actual job of acting. I have a great passion for it. So he used 2 words. He used love and passion in one sentence. And the thing about passion is it turns underachievers into superachievers. I have a long list of famous underachievers like Einstein and Bill Gates, who people said would go nowhere when they were young. I mean, Bill Gates was such an underachiever, his parents actually sent him to counseling. I can just hear the neighbors back then saying, geez, what, that Gates kid, what a loser. He's never going to go anywhere. And he didn't go anywhere until he found his passion for computers and software.
What a great story.
But the thing is, WendyY, the big problem is finding your passion. I mean, there's a myth that all successful people know what they want to do from the time they're young, but they don't. I found a much bigger group of successful people who didn't have a clue what their passion was, and it took them years and even decades for them to find it. So I say to people, if you haven't found your passion yet, don't panic. Just keep looking.
Yeah, and, I'm a believer. As a coach, I coach a lot of people who are pursuing their passion, and they want to find it, and they want to understand what it is. And what I like to tell people is just keep living.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing and paying attention to what you're naturally drawn to, what you're really interested in, and at some point you will just find your passion.
Yeah, and the thing I add is if you're what do you do if you're in a job you don't love? Because we all end up there sometimes, right? And I say, if you're in a job you don't love, then just do what you love on the side.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is Albert Einstein, the world's greatest physicist, worked as a patent clerk. That was his job, but his passion was physics, and he wrote 4 of his most important papers in his spare time as a hobby. So it's amazing what you can do if you love what you do. So just do what you love on the side, and eventually it might go somewhere.
I got to ask you this, and I know we've got to talk about these other 3 before we go to our next break. But I got to ask you, you said you were a little surprised by the free use of the word passion and love when you talk to folks like Russell Crowe and some other folks. Why was that a surprise to you?
Well, I guess where I grew up in Nova Scotia in sort of a rough neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And if I'd said to anybody in my gang, I love what I do, they would have looked at me and then beat me up because it was just not something a guy ever said, right?
Yeah.
Like you might have loved a girl, but you didn't love your job,
Yeah.
So
you just don't share that kind of. To me, it's a little revealing. So you just don't tell people that kind of thing, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think, but now having studied so many successful people, I do what they do. Now I don't mind telling people I love what I do. It's great. It's just that I grew up in a a tough area where that wasn't the thing to say.
Well, and I can imagine once you find your passion, at least this is how I feel. I have a passion for coaching groups and sharing with people how to do that. And now that I found my passion and I know what I love, you can't shut me up about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great.
And I'm sure that's how it is with you as well.
It is, and I feel sorry for the people that haven't found their passion yet because they think there's something wrong with them. And that's why I keep saying, don't worry. If you haven't found it,
just keep living.
Just keep doing it. Yeah, just keep trying.
Living.
You just got to try a lot of stuff,
So let's talk about work. That's the second.
All successful people work really hard. Martha Stewart said to me, I'm a real hard worker. I work and work all the time. Mm-hmm. And but the thing is, you got to remember that they actually have fun working because they love it. So I say successful people aren't workaholics. They're actually workaholics.
I saw that in your video. I thought that was a really cool phrase that you coined, a new word.
Yeah, I coined it, and because I'm trying to break that myth that successful people are workaholics. And I just say, well, if you love what you do, you do it a lot. So, basically, that's why they work a lot. It's not necessarily even because they're trying to make money. It's because they like doing it. Like, why wouldn't I work a lot if I like to do it?
Yeah. And it doesn't feel cumbersome. It's not like you're frazzled and stressed out, and you're loving what you do. You're enjoying it in such a way that it's just natural.
Exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of long hours. Oprah says, I'd never see daylight. I'd come into work at 5:30 in the morning when it was dark and leave at 7 or 8 when it was dark. She just went from garage to garage. So, Bill Gates, even after he was a multimillionaire, worked most nights until 10 o'clock, and he only took 2 weeks off in 7 years. And he probably spent them on his computer. So, there are long hours, and there's times when you go, why am I working this hard? But generally, they wouldn't trade it for anything. So.
Wow, that's wonderful. So what that says to me is keep doing what you're doing, WendyY, because I work really hard. But I'm a workaholic.
That's good.
I'm glad to know I'm a workaholic. We talked a little bit earlier about focus, but let's really, really dig deep on this focus thing, because so many people out there have passions, multiple passions, as we talked about before, and they just want to do everything. One of the things that I see in clients who come to me is they want to really work hard. They're passionate about a number of different things, and they want to dabble in all of those things. What do you say to them about focus?
Well, basically, and to be honest, Wendy, this one really surprised me in my research because I was brought up to believe you should be well-rounded and do a whole bunch of things and not just do one thing. Mm-hmm. So but my research totally turned me around because I talked to so many successful people and found so many successful people who weren't well-rounded. They could only do one thing. And, it may have different aspects, but they're basically doing one thing. So now I firmly believe, and I'm not saying you do that your whole life. I say when you're young, you have to dabble, right? You have to try lots of stuff. Mm-hmm. But just know in the back of your mind that success eventually is going to require a single-minded focus. You've got to be. Larry Page, co-founder of Google, said to me, these things take a long time to do, and you've got to be single-minded about it and put all your energy into one place, not a whole bunch of different places.
Yeah, and to me that kind of goes right into the fourth 8 to great, which is push. You say push through the self-doubt. Push through there's another term that you use as well. Self-doubt is one.
Two, there's shyness and self-doubt. Those are two things that we really have to push through. I'm amazed how many successful people are incredibly shy. They just keep pushing through it. Even people we see on stage and screen.
Who's someone that we would be surprised to know is very shy?
Well, there's quite a few actors. Rip Torn says, actually most actors are shy because acting suits itself to shy people because most of the time you're speaking to a camera or you're reading your script. And
they get to become someone totally different when they go on stage or in front of a camera.
Good point. So it's suited to shy people. Larry Page, co-founder of Google, who's now a billionaire, has to be one of the shyest people I ever met. He was so shy, I wanted to say, it's okay, Larry, I'll stop. I'll go away, I won't bother you anymore, because it was painful for me to interview him. But like I say, it hasn't stopped him. He's now a billionaire. So, in my book, I show why shyness is actually good. There's a whole there are a lot of reasons why successful people are shy, or shy people become successful. It's because, they spend a lot more time alone, reading, learning, using their imaginations, focusing. And when they're with people, instead of talking, they tend to be the listeners and observers, and those all help them succeed. So it's not all bad, but, you have to push through the shyness, because you miss out on some opportunities if you're shy.
Yeah, and hence the push through. Many people I found don't understand what pushing through really looks like. Real quick, Richard, what do you suggest to someone who's really shy, who really is trying to push through the self-doubt, and the shyness and some of the other things? What's the one thing that you see helping them push through?
Well, in all my research, it's just practice, practice, practice. When I say to people, and I was shy for most of my life. My relatives remind me I didn't speak to anybody until I was 30. But I took a Dale Carnegie.
Oh, my. Okay.
I took a Dale Carnegie course, and that was great, because every Monday it pushed me to go and give a little 2-minute talk up in front of people. And the first night you're scared, you can hardly speak, and by the 12th week, just because you've practiced so much, you're actually pretty good at it. So the trick is practice, 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 and take small steps. Don't take big steps. Just try little things at first and then keep going.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, practice till you make it is what I say.
Yeah. If you have to step into a pretend mode like an actor, but in front of the camera or on the stage, then do that until it becomes something that you wear comfortably.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, great. Well, it looks like we've got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk to Richard about the last 4 of the 8 to Great. We're talking with Richard St. John, who is the author of 8 to Great. And I'm looking forward to talking with you on the other side, Richard.
Sounds great, WendyY. It's lots of fun.
Want to stay on top of what's new in the radio industry? Sign up for a free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio, available exclusively to listeners of globaltalkradio.com, and find out what's new in the world of online radio. Listeners can find out about new shows and special guests. People with something special to offer can find out how to become a guest and how to prepare for an interview. And prospective hosts will find a valuable resource for everything from planning their new program to selecting topics and guests, recouping expenses by selling advertising, and more. Sign up today for your free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio by visiting www.globaltalkradio.com and learn about the future of talk radio today.
Welcome back to the Indie Business Radio Show. I'm WendyY Bailey, and I'm sitting in for Donna Maria. I'm talking with Richard St. John, who's the author of 8 to Be Great, and we've covered the first 4 of the 8 steps to be great. Now let's talk about the final 4, Richard. Number 5, you say, is ideas, and we touched on this a little bit earlier when you talked about how the ideas tend to flow when you exercise fitness, and of course that's one of your passions. The running is one of your passions.
Right.
So let's talk about what you mean when you say it takes ideas for you to be great.
Well, WendyY, if you look around at successful people, the Bill Gates of the world, often, or the Richard Bransons or Martha, it's often because their successes, a lot of it is due to just having one good little idea. I mean, look at Bill Gates. He had the idea to start the world's first company to make software for PCs. And I'd say that little idea sure changed his life.
And the world.
And the world, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ideas, WendyY, are all about creativity, but I actually don't like the word creative because there's a myth that only artsy people are creative.
Mm-hmm.
But, you've got to have a paintbrush in your hand to be creative. But, in fact, it's not true. The reality is everybody is creative, and, I've worked with many business people who are actually far more creative than the artists I know. As Donald Trump says, deals are my art form. So in the book I show a lot of simple ways that people come up with ideas, and that's the real thing. You have to know there's no magic to it. It's just doing some very simple things. And I say to people, what's the biggest secret to getting great ideas? Write them down. Because whether your idea is equals MC squared or pick up milk on the way home, if you don't write it down, it's going to fly away and never return.
Yeah, the thought that I have every time someone says write them down is the character that Michael Keaton played in Night Shift. He walked around with his tape recorder and he recorded all of his just really harebrained ideas into this tape recorder, and he had some doozies in there.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the clear thing that I got from that, I saw this movie several years ago, and it still sticks with me. The thing that I got from that is if you don't record them somehow, whether it's in this tape recorder like he had, or you write them down somehow, then they're lost to the ethers.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm never without a pad and two pens in case one runs out of ink, always. And now I always carry a little digital recorder. And I've gotten some great interviews, like Russell Crowe. I got him because I happened to run up to the YMCA to work on the weight machines, and I saw him in the parking lot parking his bike. I had my recorder with me. I went over to him and said, Russell, I'm doing this project. Can I get an interview? He said, sure. And if I hadn't had it,
Awesome.
So, and whenever I'm out for a run, like I say, if I come up with an idea, I used to carry a pad and paper, but it's awkward to stop and write it down, and then the pen sticks, and you don't get, so eventually I hated dictation. I hated speaking to answering machines, but I taught myself to dictate so that I could carry a little recorder and do it that way to make it faster.
Very good. I say carry the digital recorder and then have someone transcribe it for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what I do. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Improve is number 6, and I totally get this one. We were talking on break, and you asked me how I got into coaching, and my background is process, project, program management in information technology, and the whole idea of a process is you're always looking for ways to improve it. It's related to software development and software operations and things like that,
right.
But the same is true no matter where the process is. You always want to look for ways to improve. So that's what I think improve means. What did you mean when you actually identified this one?
Yeah, basically the same thing. At first I called it good, like that you have to be good at something, but then I realized that being good was just a part of improvement. So I made improve the big section head. Mm-hmm. And you're right, you pick up, in corporations, there was always a talk about continuous improvement, right? And so we have to do that on a personal basis. It's like successful people are on this continuous mission to improve themselves and what they do, and they never think they're good enough. It amazes me. Some of the best people in the world never think they're good enough,
Interesting.
But that's what's made them good,
Yeah, it's a journey rather than a destination. It's a continuous, ongoing path that you're on.
Yeah, and when I talked to a great pioneer fabric designer, one of my heroes when I was in art college, Jack Leonard Larson, he was in his 80s when I met him, and finally, I asked him what he was going to do for the rest of his life, and he just said, I want to keep on improving. I thought, that's why he got to where he is, But the thing is, and the trick is, it's all just basically about practice. When Lance Armstrong was asked how he won the Tour de France for the 7th time, he said, the difference is my team practices 12 months of the year, not 3 or 4. When, how did Michael Phelps win 8 gold medals a few weeks ago?
Practice.
The head coach of the U.S. swim team says Michael Phelps trains the hardest of anybody he's ever seen. There's no magic to this stuff. It's just doing the practice,
Yeah, and the thing that I get from that, Richard, is you never arrive. You're always in the mode of learning and growing, and the more you learn and the more you grow, the more you improve.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
great,
well put.
great. Serve is number 7. This is one that you just gotta love, because who would have thunk that all of those successful people out there are really in a mode of service?
They really are,
and
they're very outward oriented. You know, if I stand around the conferences where I go to with the world's top people, you don't hear the word I very much. They don't talk about themselves very much. They're very outward oriented. They're always more interested in telling you about their project or something they're working on than they are in talk. I used to drag it out of them sometimes about themselves because they don't want to talk about themselves. You know, they're more interested in other things, and I think that's something to remember, you know.
That's kind of that shy thing as well, isn't it? It's like, oh, I don't want to talk about me. Let's talk about the work that I'm doing.
Interesting. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And how it's going to help others and what it can do to serve. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, sometimes when I say serve, people think I mean in a charity sense, you know, Mother Teresa serving the poor. But the interesting thing I found, I mean, that's one aspect, but it's interesting that, you know, if you look at all the top billionaires, they all got rich by serving us something of value, whether it's, you know, Bill Gates serving us software we value, or Sam Walton serving us discounts at Walmart, or Martha serving us homemaking tips. You know, she said to me, I came to people with valuable information and products, and, you know, there's that word value, and that's what made Martha America's first female self-made billionaire. So,
very cool.
So serving, we tend to think of it as being in a totally charitable sense, but the interesting thing is if you help other people, it all comes back to help you.
Yeah, to me, that's what serve really means. It's a product, a service, a spirit that helps other people in some way.
Exactly.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. Who are some other really cool people that you talk to? As we're winding down, Persist is the last one, and I'd love to hear some people maybe that you haven't mentioned before that let you know Persist was really had to be one of the 8 to be great.
Well, Persist is an important one because, like I say, there is no overnight success. And the thing that amazed me was some of these people that you think, you know, and they're scientists that people may not know their particular names, but, you know, James Watson, the co-discoverer of DNA, you know, that's a pretty big title for a guy, right?
Yeah.
You know, he had to persist through criticism. You know, when he told me that when he came up with his model for DNA, he showed it to a chemist, and the chemist said, it's wrong, you know, you've got the hydrogen atoms in the wrong place, and you really chewed James out. Well, James could have ignored the criticism, but he didn't. He says, the next day I thought you know, this guy might be right. So I changed locations of the atoms, and we knew we were right, and we knew it was big. And I'd say it was big because it won him the Nobel Prize. So, you know, persisting through that criticism, but actually using it, you know, constructively to help him made a big difference in his life.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just one example in terms of criticism. And we got to persist through, you know, rejection. You know, Paul McCartney was rejected. He says, when I was in school, I wrote some poetry for the school newspaper, and it got rejected. So then I made up my mind to become a songwriter to get back at them. So I'd say he's gotten back at them pretty well, you know.
Yeah, and, you know, you're sort of leading us into an acronym that you use, CRAP.
Oh, right.
Persist through the crap. You said criticism is for the C, the R is for rejection. What's the A and the P for?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking to, but on the air I'll say the A stands for adversity.
Okay.
And the P stands for prejudice. So,
wow.
So
okay.
criticism, rejection, adversity, and prejudice. Because we're all going to encounter all those things at one time or another. And
in some form or fashion,
yeah. And the trick is don't let it stop you, you know. You just got to keep going. I mean, I haven't been rejected. I didn't take rejection very well until I started this research. But, you know, and most people, like I say, don't reject me when I ask for an interview. But the one rejection that stands out was I was rejected 4 years in a row by Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons. Every year I'd see him at a conference and ask for an interview, and every year he'd reject me. But I kept asking, and on the 5th year, he said yes. And he gave me a great interview, and he gave me my own personal drawing of Bart Simpson. And it's hanging on the desk on the wall beside my desk here to remind me that persistence pays off.
Very, very cool. So what's the difference between push and persist? Because they seem like they're kindred spirits a little bit.
That's a very perceptive question, Wendy. And you're the second person that's ever asked me that. The way I defined it was push is more an internal force. We have to push through shyness. That's something we have. We have to push through self-doubt. That's something we have, right? Persist is all about pushing through things that other people impose on us. Like
the external stuff.
External people criticize us, So push we have more control over than persist, because persist is coming from the outside, whereas push is something inside us.
Yeah, and I can imagine that there has to be some level of awareness as to where you are, whether you're pushing or persisting, in order to garner the right tools to get through whatever it is.
Yeah, a good point. And the other thing I'd say is that push can be short-term. I mean, you can be shy for, on occasion kind of thing, but persist is something you have to do over years. Do you know what I mean? It's more of a long-term. It takes 10 years to succeed in anything, according to my research. It took 10 years for Einstein to come up with E equals MC squared. It took research in motion 10 years to come up with the BlackBerry. Steven Spielberg had the script for Schindler's List for 10 years before he made the movie that actually won him the big Academy Award. I have this huge list of 10-year climbs that it took people to do. So, there really is no such thing as overnight success, and we just got to persist through it.
Wow.
We all want it, but it doesn't come. It doesn't happen.
No, it's not overnight.
And failure, like too. Failure's a big one. I'd say if you want to succeed, it actually helps to fail a lot. Remember, Michael Jordan missed 9,000 shots in his career. He lost 300 games. He says, I failed over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. So
I love that, by the way. I really do.
The trick is to make failure your school, not your funeral. If you fail, then crash and learn. Don't crash and burn.
I like that. That's great. That's great. Let's do a quick review, and then I'd love to get your closing thoughts for the listeners out there. The 8 to be great are passion, work, focus, push, ideas, improve, serve, and persist. So these are really, really juicy things, and I got to tell you, I'm walking away from our conversation, Richard, feeling really, really empowered in what I do every day as an indie business, and I hope our listeners get that too. What are some thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with as we wind down our interview here today?
Well, just building on what you said, WendyY, and you're already successful, and so I'm sure you already do these things, so congratulations to you. And but the great thing about these 8 things is they're all simple things anybody can do. I'm not saying success is easy, but the things that lead to success are easy to understand and apply in our own lives. And trust me, after 10 years of research, I can tell you these are the top 8. And I can also tell you the successful people aren't special. They're just ordinary people like anybody else. It's just that they do more of these 8 things than anybody else, and that's what makes them great.
Wow.
And the book, 8 to be Great, is available through Amazon or your local bookstore. And again, our website is 8tobegreat.com or richardstjohn.com.
Richard, it has been a joy talking with you. Once again, Richard's website is richardstjohn.com or 8tobegreat.com. The book, 8 to be Great, is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I also think I saw Borders on your website.
Yep.
And be sure to pick it up, because just like we've enjoyed talking with Richard here, you will get so much out of the many interviews that he did of successful people that you and I know and love, and we can learn and grow from their experiences as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Richard.
Thank
and of
you
course,
so much, Wendy.
And, of course, thank you to the listeners out there for taking time to be with me today. I've so enjoyed being here as the guest host. This is WendyY Bailey of Group Mastery. Visit my website at www.groupmastery.com, and you can tweet me at WendyY Bailey2. I'd love to meet you, would love for you to follow me and learn with me in this journey we call life. Richard, thanks again for being here. I so appreciate your presence. I've learned a lot about 8 to Be Great, and I got to tell you, I'm much more in tune with each one of these more than ever before because of having had this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, WendyY. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and here's to your continued success.
Great, great. Donna Maria will be back next week with guest Robert Day, author of How Come No One Knows About Us. So be sure to tune in, and as always, join the conversation at indiebusinessblog.com, where you can get Donna Maria's best tips and insights for indie business success. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way.
You're listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com.